This documentary was brought to you by Jazzy Dyer, Orion Ranke, Caleb DeFee, and Wyatt Lilly. The ivory trade is an illegal trade of ivory from narwhals, mammoths, rhinos, and most commonly, elephants. Because of this, the number of elephants in Africa have dropped severely. In only the years 2010, 2011, and 2012, over 100,000 African elephants were slaughtered. Why is this such a big deal? Elephants are pregnant for 3 to 5 years, only give birth every 2 years, and only birth one calf. On a yearly basis, 10,000 African elephants are killed. By the time one elephant has a This isn't limited to elephants, however. The narwhal, or Monodon monoceros, are near threatened at a very sad 80,000 narwhals remaining. Since 2008, poachers have killed over 5,000 rhinos for their ivory. Because of this, the African rhino could be extinct in 10 years. According to reports from Save the Elephants, a wildlife organization in Africa, the price for raw ivory in China was $2,100 per kilogram in 2014. In 2010, it was $750 per kilogram. Between 2010 and 2012, the average number of elephants being poached and killed each year was 33,000. Based on statistics from CITES, Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species, in 2013 there were at least 20,000 elephants killed worldwide because of their tusks. It was slightly less than the 22,000 in 2012 and the 25,000 killed in 2011. Because of this, there was an estimated amount of 500,000 elephants left living in the world. 95% of the entire species population was poached and killed in the last 100 years. The ivory collected not only from elephants in Africa, but also from hippos, walruses, narwhals, and mammoths. It is then shipped to carvers and artists and then sold in stores in Asia and Africa. The known countries are Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda in Africa, and then China, Malaysia, and the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam in Asia. Many of the gangs involved in wildlife trafficking are now using already existing drug trafficking routes to smuggle the ivory. Ivory is not only used to make valuable statues, but also chopsticks, ornaments, hair accessories. According to wildlife charities, around 100 elephants are poached per day as of January 6, 2014. 70% of all ivory demand comes from China. In 1980, there was an estimated 1.2 million elephants left in the world. The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora was agreed on March 3, 1973, and the treaty became effective on July 1, 1975. The Endangered Species Act was signed into law on December 28, 1973, and became immediately effective. CITES became effective on July 1, 1975. The Asian elephant was listed on CITES Appendix 1, which banned the international commercial trade in Asian elephant ivory. Asian elephant ivory possessed prior to the state is pre-convention and can be traded internationally for commercial purposes with valid CITES documentation. The Asian elephant was listed as endangered under the ESA. Asian elephant ivory possessed prior to 1976 can be declared as pre-act and can be sold domestically within the U.S. with proper documentation. Asian elephant ivory that was possessed prior to 1873 can also be sold within the U.S. as antique. The African elephant was listed on CITES Appendix 2, International Trade for Primarily Commercial Purposes Continued. Exporting countries were required to make certain findings to ensure that the export of ivory from their country was not causing a detriment to the survival of the species and that it was legally acquired. During this period, the international trade in African elephant ivory was regulated by CITES. The African elephant was listed as threatened under the ESA. A special rule allowed commercial ivory trade, including import and sale of African elephant ivory, to continue under certain circumstances related to the regulation of this international trade in African elephant ivory by CITES. After 10 years, it became clear that the supposedly well-regulated international trade in African elephant ivory was a failure. The African elephant population had been cut by more than half in those 10 years, plummeting from 1.3 million in 1978 to only 600,000 in 1988. Elephants were being poached for their ivory tusks, and this ivory was being laundered into the supposedly regulated trade to such an extent that by 1988 it was estimated that over 90% of the ivory in international trade was from poached elephants. In response to this crisis, the U.S. Congress passed the African Elephant Conservation Act, which gave the President power to ban the import of African elephant ivory into the U.S. for commercial purposes.